animal. She's a common sense mom, grandmother. You know, she's very, very typical of a lot of Christian conservatives in America, women. And so she's a great barometer. So I didn't say anything. I just played the clip of Pam Bondi yesterday, which we'll play here in a second. And I said, what do you think? She said she seems unhinged. She seems unhinged. She seems to me like she's being extremely emotional and angry, and it's very unbecoming. Aside from whatever she might be standing for, her attitude, and that's what she said. My wife said, she seems to have a real attitude about herself. So aside from the issue, the immediate reaction from my wife was, what's with her attitude? Why is she acting so arrogant and uppity? And I said, babe, that's why I love to get your feedback, because that's what I got. But I want to be careful because I'm a man and I don't want to be accused of anything. I'm not a male chauvinist. And I wanted your response as a woman. She said, well, I don't like her attitude. I mean, we could talk about what she was saying, but I don't like her attitude. And then she goes off into this diatribe about how great the economy is. And so I said to my wife, you know, she's trying to make issue over how great the economy is. And the topic was prosecuting what appear to be people at the highest levels of government and corporations for being involved in what is reportedly, according to what we're seeing, possibly child trafficking, or certainly regular relationships with a guy that was found guilty of that, was he not? Child trafficking. And she wants to turn it to the economy. There's a reason why you're going to see the Republicans lose in the midterms, I believe. I know it's still very early. A lot can happen. A lot can change. But if the election were held tomorrow, you would see one of the largest historical defeats of the Republican Party in American history. And it'll largely become, I believe, my opinion, and I could be wrong, but my opinion will be, it at this point would be based on a lot of people that just don't show up. A lot of Republicans, a lot of Republican women, a lot of independents, a lot of libertarians who simply say, you know what, it is a uniparty. And I'm not messing with this anymore because it's a waste of time, because they never do what they say they're going to do. They throw you a few bones here and there. But at the end of the day, if we cannot prosecute people, unmask people involved with this Jeffrey Epstein character, what are we? What do we stand for? Joining me now is Chris Martenson. Chris, welcome to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Brandon. It's good to be back with you here today and all your listeners.
Thank you, Chris. What are your thoughts on my opening monologue here today?
It's exactly right. I think that, you know, there are political scandals that come and go, but this one with the Epstein affair is crossed some sort of a Rubicon for a lot of people. I talk with a lot of people out there who are not willing to let this go. They're like, if we let this go, who are we? What do we stand for? You know, I understand it's turned into something of some political football, and we can talk about how Pam Bondi fumbled that football pretty badly yesterday, I believe. But I think this will be a deciding issue. It's going to be a deciding issue for a lot of people. It's going to become a one issue litmus test. And so for everybody who is wanting to minimize this or look past it or just move on from it, I think is making an egregious error here, because the social temperature that I'm discovering is that it's just too much. It's just that's it. I mean, this is really caught fire. And I know the mainstream media is doing what it can to downplay it, to pretend like something's more important, this one missing grandmother out there in you know, out west. But this is, in my crew, in my circles, this is the number one issue. Wow, there was this very long running, highly involved ring of people who were doing some things that should have been investigated and weren't under successive administrations, including this one. And it's been covered up the whole time. And so it speaks to all kinds of issues all at once, a two-tier justice system, a sense of these people, Brandon, had such a sense of impunity that they were writing things in emails that was like grade school people, wink, wink, running their little code words for that are very easy to see through and decipher. And so this, I think, is a moral issue. This is a moral test of our nation. And I do believe that anybody who's not firmly on the side of what's right in this story not only will get tossed out of office, but deserves to be tossed out.
Well, apparently, Governor of Florida, DeSantis, did he just hold a press conference today, guys? Can you check? Was that today? Now, I can't play the clip that I'm seeing because apparently somebody jumped in and started cussing at the governor. The clip I'm seeing is he was getting cussed at over the whole Epstein thing. So this is becoming a real problem. And then Pam Bondi says we should all be talking about the great economy, not Jeffrey Epstein. Wait a minute. Didn't President Trump run on the issue of we're going to get to the bottom of the Epstein thing? Didn't his own Attorney General, Pam Bondi, stand out in front of the White House? We've got the clip saying there are thousands of videos. And she used the word child porn. Thousands of videos. Now, all of a sudden, there's nothing to see. We should be talking about the Dow. Is it because there are powerful Republicans in there? Are there friends of Trump in there? I don't think President Trump is in there because I think if he were, that would have been used against him a long time ago. But are there powerful people? I mean, his Commerce Secretary seems to be kind of in hot water, right, Chris?
Well, absolutely. Howard Lutnik is got a lot of splaining to do here. But we did hear from Representative Nancy Mace came out and said, listen, she was in there seeing unredacted things. And she said, guess what? There are powerful Republicans in there, and there are powerful Democrats, and there are powerful business people, and there are powerful celebrities in there, well-known people. So that's at least part of what we have to talk about, is that this wasn't just like a little crew of people who were sort of getting away with some things. This looks like it was everybody. I mean, everybody in Trump's own cabinet, well, cabinet plus his White House right now, 37 people are named in the Epstein files. I don't know anybody personally who's named in the Epstein files. Like, you randomly pick 1 million Americans, you're not going to find that many people named in there. But somehow, if you were part of DC, the swamp that Trump said he wanted to drain, if you were anybody who's anybody in that sphere, somehow you got looped in. And we found out that it wasn't Epstein just trafficking minors. He was also involved in funding Bitcoin and hanging out with Bill Gates, talking about pandemics, and having an office at Harvard. And he was really slotted in. But it wasn't about Epstein. Can we be clear about this? This predates Epstein, and it'll post-date him as well if we don't deal with it. He was just somebody who happened to get caught, and I think he ran a kind of a sloppy operation. But we saw, Brandon, people writing emails. They're sophisticated. They know that emails are forever and searchable, and they didn't care. They still wrote stuff that's pretty easy to see through. Really, really harmful stuff, by the way. What were they talking about in private? What were they talking about in their encrypted apps like WhatsApp and Signal? What were they doing out of sort of earshot of these files that we have? We don't know. But we do know that they have lots and lots of pictures and video evidence, even though I'm sure they tried to scrub it as hard as they could. They still have lots of that. They're not releasing that and then telling us there's nothing to investigate here. Heard that from Kash Patel. Oh, don't you think, bro, if we had something that we could charge somebody with, that we wouldn't, and we heard it from Pam Bondi. There's nothing here. There's nothing further to investigate. We heard it from the Assistant Attorney General who's tasked with all of this. He said the same thing. There won't be any more prosecutions. And then we heard the press secretary say, we're moving on, right? And the collective response, at least from the places I hang out, was, nope, we are not moving on. And I don't see how we can, honestly.
Well, how can you? Because it helps explain, Chris, why it is that we vote, and no matter who's in office, nothing changes for the most part. You get a few bones, again, as I said earlier, thrown to you, but nothing really changes. And this is how whoever is the shadow government, the intelligence group, the shadow government, this is how they control people. And now it explains why nothing really ever gets done. It is a uniparty. And, you know, you go back in the archives of this broadcast 20 plus years ago, I was saying, you know, a lot of these guys are captured. They're on video doing things they shouldn't be doing. And when I was saying that close to 20 years ago, I'm sure there were some listeners going, oh, yeah, whatever, conspiracy theory. He just thinks everybody's bad, horrible. I'm like, no, you know how the game is played because we watched how the Soviet Union played it. We watched how they played it with their honeypots and their bribes. And we go back to Richard Wurmbrand in communist Romania, where he openly writes in his books. He spent 14 years in Romanian communist prison and got out, wrote books, and did a lot of interviews and started a ministry to deal with the persecuted church around the world. And he said the communists would entrap the pastors. They would entrap the priests. And then they would make the pastor and the priest their useful idiot, and they would use money or sex. And then they owned them. So I'm studying all this for years, and I'm thinking, well, if this is what the mafia does, if this is what the communists do, if this is what the KGB does, doesn't it make sense? Doesn't human nature tell you this is the way any kind of shadow government would work? And now people are realizing that those of us that were warning that most of your elected officials are captured, this is why they don't ever really do anything. Now they're realizing it is. And we can't move on because that is why we don't have our liberties being secured. This is how these guys are getting legislation through that is stripping us of our liberty and freedoms because the globalists are using their pawns who are dirty to do their bidding. And now it's going to lead us into what we're going to get to here in a minute, which is digital ID, digital dollars, social credit scores, and then you try saying something against your elected officials. Oh, they're on video doing this with a minor. It won't matter. It will not matter because they will have all the control. And what can you say about it? It won't matter. I wanted you to comment on that when we come back. Music's playing, hard break, computer taking it away. Did you know that Pam Bondi reportedly ran for AG in Florida on the issue of sex trafficking? Would you guys like to see a video and hear the audio where she ran on that? How many of you are so tired of these people telling you one thing and then doing another when they get into power? I mean, I'm guessing she's going to go into private practice. I don't think she could get elected dog catcher if she ran for anything ever again, right? We'll be right back. Don't go away. Studies have shown America's water supply is not safe. It is filled with toxins and chemicals. Go look it up. This is fact. Fact check me. And then I'll offer you this solution. Worldviewwater.net. Take a look at this list. This water purifier removes all kinds of harmful toxins like lead, fluoride, chlorine, arsenic, pesticides, bacteria, and pharmaceuticals, and more. This is the water I give to my 3 dogs. I drink it every day. I have one of the filters in my kitchen, under the kitchen sink, and then I have one on my shower. Do you know how much your skin absorbs of water when you're in the shower each and every day? Protect yourself and your body. Remain healthy. Eat good food. Drink purified, clean water. One of the most powerful water filters available in America. Worldviewwater.net. That's worldviewwater.net. Again, tell your family and friends about it. In fact, maybe even give this as a gift to some of your family and friends, particularly those of you who have children and grandchildren. Worldviewwater.net. Worldview Radio, our website, worldviewradio.com. My guest, Chris Martenson of peakprosperity.com, peakprosperity.com. And all of these issues are connected because, again, we're talking about how our elected officials, local, state, and federal, end up being controlled. And so legislation, policies get passed that end up not allowing us to have a free market, not to have a free society, not to have the respect of private property, how to go to 15-minute cities, to clamp down on us. This is how, in part, you have so much crime and corruption even with the judiciary that never gets dealt with, because even many of our judges have been caught up in schemes and scams. Now, I want to play a quick video, a couple videos for you, audio clip for radio, obviously. Here's Pam Bondi running for Attorney General. Listen to what was her You got audio playing somewhere else do you, Guy? All right, is that gone? All right, listen to Pam Bondi's commercial from where she was running for Attorney General and what platform in part she was running on. Here we go.
Florida ranks 3rd nationally in calls for help for human trafficking, where young women and children are enslaved and abused. I knew we needed all hands on deck. Businesses and hospitals to spot it, our great law enforcement to stop it, and tougher penalties to punish it. We're taking on Medicaid fraud, pill mills, gangs, and more, and I'll fight to put human trafficking monsters where they belong, behind bars.
Pam Bondi, our Attorney General.
You know, she's got that same cadence and strife in her voice that she always has, which, let me just tell you, as a public speaker, has been a major red flag with me. It's a major red flag when someone has that vocal inflection and cadence almost all the time she's in public. It's one thing to, you get upset, you get on your soapbox, you have some righteous indignation. But listen to her tone of voice and the way she enunciates and her forcefulness. To me, as a public speaker, I'm telling you, I've been watching this now for a while. And when I hear, I think, in my opinion, what I hear is fake, fake. She's trying too hard to try to convince you of something that's not even really deep in her heart and soul. She's an actress. That's my opinion. Listen again.
Florida ranks 3rd nationally in calls for help for human trafficking, where young women and children are enslaved and abused. I knew we needed all hands on deck. Businesses and hospitals to spot it, our great law enforcement to stop it, and tougher penalties to punish it. We're taking on Medicaid fraud, pill mills, gangs, and more, and I'll fight to put human trafficking.
And I'll fight. And she does this. You can even hear it a little less in some of her other comments, her voice inflection. And she does this routinely. And to me, it's a sign that she's not sincere, that this is acting at best. What do you make of that? This is what she ran on for Attorney General. But what happened to Jeffrey Epstein under her watch as Attorney General in Florida?
Ooh, he got a super sweet deal. It was finally investigated, I believe, by a detective out of the Miami area or Palm Beach, and came up with 20 or 30 young women's stories, did all the investigation, handed it over. And wouldn't you know it, one thing happens, another thing happens. Acosta is at the federal level, and he gets charged with a single count of trafficking or prostitution with an underage person. Okay. When he could have been charged with something far worse, obviously. But even after he's charged, we found out that his homes weren't raided, his island wasn't raided, the ranch in New Mexico, none of that was even touched for years and years. And in fact, I don't think any of them were actually officially looked into until after he was dead in 2019. So whatever Pam was up to, she was not aggressively going after the things she said she was. But it's interesting, you put that up. She's like, we're going after pill mills and Medicare fraud. I'm like, have you seen a single Somali in handcuffs yet for the Minnesota fraud? Because I haven't. If it happened, I missed it.
Do we have yeah, well said. Do we have another clip, guys? Okay, some stuff from her testimony, how the Dow is so great. So we ignore child trafficking. You got money in your pockets, folks. Really? Here we go.
Did you ask Merrick Garland that the last 4 years? Did you talk about Epstein?
I am reclaiming my time. I'm glad you're asking about Merrick Garland.
You don't get to reclaim time when you don't.
This is bigger than Watergate.
When I don't answer a question the way you want.
This goes over 4 administrations. You don't have to go back to Biden. Let's go back to Obama. Let's go back to George Bush. This cover-up spans decades, and you are responsible for this portion of it.
And that's
now,
where the
I want to know at what point did the FBI and the DOJ decide that Lex Wessner was not a co-conspirator? Because our Epstein Files Transparency Act requires you, please put it back on the screen, please, to release the internal decision about whether to prosecute him or not, and it's not in the files, and it's not in the files for any of these other men.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
May she answer?
And he's a hypocrite because he voted against the ban that we were talking about on deep fake AI porn. Only 2 people voted against it, and you were one of them, hypocrite.
The gentleman's time has expired.
She didn't answer the question.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, could she answer the question?
Chairman, I was
The Dow is over $50,000. I don't know why you're laughing. You're a great stock trader, as I hear, Raskin. The Dow is over 50,000 right now. The S&P at almost 7,000. And the NASDAQ smashing records. Americans' 401ks and retirement savings are booming. That's what we should be talking about. We should be talking about making Americans safe. We should be talking about, what does a Dow have to do with anything? That's what they just asked. Are you kidding?
Mr. Jordan, Mr. Jordan.
Committee will be in order.
Mr. Jordan, am I going to get an extra 45 seconds added to my time?
The committee will be in order. The time belongs to the gentleman from Texas. Ms. Bondi, the Attorney General can respond.
Thank you. The Dow has shattered 50,000 for the first time. This is crazy. They said it couldn't be done in 4 years, yet President Trump has done it in 1 year.
Okay. I would like to ask Pam Bondi, hey, sweetheart, can you define Keynesian economics for me? Can you define Keynesian economics? Can you contrast that with classic or Austrian economics? Can you tell me what John Maynard Keynes meant when he said, by a continuous process of inflation, we can steal the majority of the people's wealth, and not one man in a million will know what we're doing. And while it impoverishes some, it greatly enriches others. Others. Hey, baby girl, tell me, what's Keynesian economics? That's what I would ask her. And why is it these people never come on my show? They go on all of these podcasts of all these MAGA people, America First people, but they never come on a real program that has never prostituted itself and bowed down and worshiped the MAGA agenda. Where we agree, we say we agree. Where we disagree, we say we disagree. We're journalists. We're news people. Okay? We don't promote candidates. I don't publicly endorse candidates. I talk about the issues. That's why they don't come on here, because they know I don't use ghostwriters for my books. My 20-plus books, I wrote them. My documentaries, I wrote those documentaries. Siege, 6 hours. Sabotage was 6 hours. Siege, 8.5 hours. I wrote those. I'm not bragging. I'm just simply saying I did the work. I'm the student. I wrote them. I know history. These people don't come on my show because I would make them look like the empty suits they are. This woman is sitting there, Chris, bragging about the Dow. She apparently doesn't understand this is largely, I think a lot of it's based on fraud, fake numbers, corrupt books of corporations, and it's certainly based on pumping money. Does she know that there's a plunge protection team? There's all these stopgaps to make sure that Wall Street's protected. Forget about Main Street. Is she not aware that when you pump money like we're doing and expanding our books as a nation to the tune of like $1 trillion? What is it? How many months? Every few months, another $1 trillion. Does she not understand how debasement works and how it inflates the price of things? And she's celebrating over 50,000 for the Dow, but I don't think she understands artificial inflation. Now it's your turn.
Well, she doesn't. And unfortunately, she broke what we would call the fourth wall, which is when you're watching a movie and an actor goes straight to camera and talks. That's breaking the fourth wall. She just said, hey, wait a minute. Who even cares about this other stuff, which has to do with Department of Justice activities, crimes, high crimes, misdemeanors, felonies, all child molestation, when the Dow is doing so good? Now, that's breaking the fourth wall, because what she's really saying is these things were committed by wealthy people who are so wealthy they're untouchable. can't we just talk about how other people are getting extremely wealthy? And when you look at the numbers, you find out, 90% of all the equities are held by just the top 10% of families in this country. So it's fundamentally, with the Dow at 50,000, is an issue that really only affects the top 10%, right? In a positive way. Second, as you mentioned, we have all these things where the government is deficit spending unbelievable amounts of money, right? 2.38 trillion for the first 7 months, in the past 7 months, of deficits. They pump the stock market all the time. They have the plunge protection team. The Federal Reserve is printing more money, expanding its balance sheet right now. They're doing everything they can to continue to make these people who are provably too rich even richer. Why too rich? Because they seem to be untouchable. There seems to be some mysterious amount of wealth that you can gain in paper dollar terms where we can't go after you. I don't understand it. You know, it's the laws apply very rapidly to people at my level and your level. But once you get into that club, it seems nothing matters. Anything goes. So I think that was a politically one of the most tone deaf things that could happen. And by the way, just to have some fun with it, she said the Dow is at $50,000. That's not how it's measured. It's not at $50,000. It's just a number. It's 50,000. So anyway, she didn't quite understand it, but she's not in the Department of Commerce. She's Department of Justice. And so she, very, very lame deflection. She felt unhinged, right? I think your wife characterized it very well. She came off very poorly in that. But most importantly, she committed what I consider to be a fairly significant moral lapse, right? Where she said, we shouldn't care about the poor, the huddled, the disadvantaged. The Bible is full of this. Of course, this is very much not a Christian thing that's happening right now over there under that she's sort of reflecting. That's what we have to talk about, I think, is actually that it's time to get back to where morals actually matter and where we do protect the innocent, because otherwise there's no point in having a country. Like, I've heard people saying it this clearly, Brennan, which is, hey, wait a minute. My taxes are supporting these people and they're doing things that I now identify as being deeply immoral. Why am I paying taxes? How am by supporting this, am I now morally complicit with it? So this is a really deep fracture right here because, you know, we can argue about details anytime. Left, right, this policy, that policy, tweak this, tweak that. But when morals don't have well, you know, you think this, you think doing this to children is bad, I don't. Like, you don't have some sort of agreed middle on that. You don't sort of come to some sort of negotiated settlement on that. Either you believe that harming innocent children is wrong, or you don't. And she said, I don't. We have to talk about that.
Let's talk about it when we come back in regards also to digital ID, digital dollars, and the fourth turning. People now, you know, it's going to be interesting to see what percentage of Americans just don't pay any taxes come up April because they're not being represented. No taxation without representation. How quick are we headed to the fourth turning and civil war or breakup? The dollar is dying. It's going down, and inflation is soaring. Are you prepared to lose through inflation your life saving, your purchasing power? I don't think you have to. I would urge you to go right now to worldviewgold.com. Worldviewgold.com. Get the free packet of information available because you know what? I've been working with this company for about 17 years and I trust them. Now, look, I don't give financial advice. I give financial opinion. And my opinion is you should do your own homework and your own due diligence. And I think that starts with getting the free, no obligation packet of information on how to put gold into your IRA, how to acquire physical gold or silver, or what is known as numismatic, 1933 and older. Education is crucial, and it starts with this free packet at worldviewgold.com, worldviewgold.com, or 1-877-864-1072, 1-877-864-1072, worldviewgold.com. Welcome back. The guys in the control room said that someone has said on one of our social media sites that he kind of took Pam Bondi's comments like, hey, the Dow's at 50,000. Do you want it to crash? Because if we start naming names, it's going to be some of the biggest names and biggest people in finance. Do you really want your retirement account and that of your voters and constituents and everybody to go to zero or crash? all the people on fixed income that depend on this. Do you really want to crash the economy? So start naming names of some of these rich and powerful people and watch what happens. I don't know. He said, is that what she was trying to say? I don't know. But it's kind of ironic. And I don't want to read the headline, the New York Post headline. I don't want to read it in total. But during the break, during the break, I saw this. Can I go to there we go. New York Post, Goldman Sachs top lawyer. Goldman Sachs top lawyer signed XOXO, which I think, what does that stand for? Hugs and kisses, on emails with Jeffrey Epstein and joked about his genitalia. Now, that's ironic that we found that during the break when we just had the guys in the control room say, someone saying, well, maybe this is about the economy. She's warning them. You don't want to know some of the names of these people. And then right during the break, I'm checking the news. There's New York Post. Goldman Sachs top lawyer signed hugs and kisses to Jeffrey Epstein, joking about body parts. I don't know. What are your thoughts before we go to the whole fourth turning, Civil War, the Union breaking apart? Because this has kind of been predicted, right? But comment on what of our people posting on social media is thinking.
You know, Pam has said this several times, which is that, this could really crater the economy if all this came out. To which you might say one of two things. First, you might say, okay, then I guess that's what we have to do because, we can't persist like this any longer. Why keep this corrupt system in place? So let's just rip the Band-Aid and deal with it. But the second thing I would say is that's malarkey. It shows these people get caught in this bubble of self-importance. They're like, oh no, if my name got out, the world would crumble all around. I guarantee you this. A lot of these names can come out. We can find out these people and go to prison and nothing happens to the stock market or the economy because they're just corrupt people. They're not as important as they think they are. I find it almost amusing that they believe that they're that important that if they're fingered as being the people they really are and they suffer some consequence, well, the world will end. That's vanity. It's hubris. It's pride. It's not actually real.
President Trump tweeted, and you got it out on your X account, AG Pam Bondi. Is it what President Trump put out? AG Pam Bondi under intense fire from the Trump deranged radical left lunatics was fantastic at yesterday's hearing on the never-ending saga of Jeffrey Epstein, where the one thing that has been proven conclusively must be their charade was that President Donald J. Trump has been 100% exonerated of their ridiculous Russia type charges. Actually, it is the derogatory term for the Democrats, many of them being donors and politicians that have been proven guilty. Republican loser, sanctimonious rhino Congressman Thomas Massie made a total fool of himself yesterday, fighting aimlessly against a hopeless agenda of hate and stupidity, as most clearly stated by his crashing job approval numbers in the great Commonwealth of Kentucky, where a military hero opponent is going to crush him in the polls, is crushing him in the polls, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Why he wants to pick a fight with Massie, I don't know. I don't agree with Massie on everything, but he is standing up for a lot of things I would agree with as well. So I don't know why he does this, but again, it's not about President Trump being 100% exonerated. This is also first and foremost about the rule of law and the children. So again, I don't know why he keeps making these kind of tone-deaf posts on social media. And I think we're kind of reaching a point, Chris, where the fourth turning, it's a book. You've talked about it for a long time. And we even had, I think, a former Russian professor talking 20 years ago, 15 years ago, predicting America would break up into various regions. I mean, we know the KGB model, and I talk about it in one of my recent articles, 27 steps by enemies, foreign and domestic, to collapse America. Former KGB guys warned that before they attack America, they would make sure we had no moral leadership in the nation. They would expose all the sexual scandals they could on every elected official they could, so that the people were left with no moral leadership. And that would be prior to attacking the country. I'm starting to feel kind of nervous about an attack on the country, where we're going with Iran, the cartel on our borders. The administration got very nervous, apparently over a party balloon that came over the border. But the fact they got so nervous over the party balloon tells me a lot. Because we've been talking here now for a few years about all these drones. We saw what Israel was able to do by sneaking drones into Iran not too long ago, right? And we've shown videos of the IRGC launching drones in the desert somewhere, and then targeting what were cardboard cutouts of humans, targeting them with machine gun fire and crashing into them. And we played that probably 2 years ago here on our broadcast and said that desert they're showing, how do we know that's not the Southwest? How do we know that's not on the Mexico-Arizona, Texas-Arizona border? Now, I think our administration and intelligence and DOD know far more than they're telling about the existential threats to the country. We know that the military is in charge of quite a lot of mileage on the border. And I read a report today, they're taking over more. The DOD is taking over more mileage. We're well over 100 miles now that the military is taking over. Our military knows way more. Our intelligence arena knows way more than they're telling the American people about the existential threats. And of course, now we have the great book by Peter Schweitzer, which I don't get a dime for promoting, but everybody should read it. The Invisible Coup. And China working with Mexico, and Mexico working with their consulates in America, 53 of them, to wage war against America. And the cartels, a narco state that he said is running about a third of Mexico, a third. And now you got the cartels who are completely militarized with their equipment, working with the CCP. We know that through their precursor chemicals for fentanyl. You know they're working with terrorists that are there. You know they're there. You know they're working together to dig tunnels and have tunnels. And now our DOD, they get nervous as a cat on a hot tin roof because a party balloon crosses the border and they all freak out. Why? Because they are anticipating something. And we have this nonstop distraction with Nancy Guthrie, yet we're not talking about all these existential threats against our country. And I just have to wonder, are we headed toward the demoralization of our leadership? We don't have that moral leadership that the KGB guys warned about. We're attacked, and we're about to be attacked, as Gordon Chang keeps warning on my broadcast over Now It's Live at Night. The next war is going to be fought on our soil. Of course, the great way to win is to make sure the country's fully divided before they begin that war on our soil. Can you comment on all that?
Well, let's start with that tweet by Trump. Yet another long, rambling, poorly grammatically, just so screed, right? No space breaks or anything. It's just one big dump. And when I look at that down there in the center, where he's once again saying, his main source of ire is Thomas Massie, who I will point out does not appear anywhere, not once, in any of the Epstein files, right? And it just feels to me a little bit like Thomas Massie, and he does vote 91% with Trump, but 8% won't do it, 8-9%, because it's not good for the country. He won't vote for additional deficits and all that other stuff. And he's his own man. But the fact that Trump really despises him, I have to scratch my head and wonder where's that coming from? And my read on that is that Thomas Massie is his own man. He operates with integrity. I don't agree with everything he does, but I agree with a lot of his positions, mostly because they're rooted in some sense of integrity and also context. He understands why deficits are bad. He wants our country to be strong. He doesn't want us sending all of our blood and treasure to all these other countries across the world. And he doesn't want us doing things that are harmful to our own country. And for that, he gets the ire of the president. So that connects because I think we're facing one of the most severe periods of serious predicaments that are coming up. With all the geopolitical tensions you mentioned, with Russia, with Iran, with China potentially, with what's going on in Mexico, all over the place. But more importantly, we have an out-of-control budget deficit right now that really needs to be reined in, but that's going to take mature leadership. That's going to take real wisdom. I don't think we're seeing that, and that's probably contributing to some of the anxiety people have. It's like, whoa. Who's in charge? Do they know where this ship is going? And are they competent to steer us through the shoals that seem to be ahead? And I think on that front, it's right for people to be a little bit nervous right now. I think it begins to explain why gold has been doing so well. I think it begins to explain how we're reading more and more about very wealthy people, particularly billionaires, starting to build bunkers. I think it explains why Ray Dalio, of Bridgewater Associates, is out there on his disaster tour, if you could call it that, saying, hey, folks, we have some really serious predicaments here related to our currency. And if we don't deal with it, we could face a real catastrophe, right? Which is basically he's echoing Austrian economics caught up with us finally, right? But I think that's where we're at. Everybody senses we've got some really serious problems out there. And somehow we're focused on Nancy Guthrie, and somehow Thomas Massie is the biggest problem in Congress. And none of it actually adds up.
Are we headed for the fourth turning? And explain to our audience who maybe don't know what that means, what it means.
So the fourth turning is this concept by Strauss and Howe, and a great book. People should read it. And, I would defer to their authority any chance. But as I understand it, you can break up humanity into 20-year chunks, right? So you get 80 years over 4 of those. And each 20-year chunk is a generation. You have your greatest generation. Each one is defined in its own way. And when you get through this, they call it also the 4 seasons, right? So you have a spring, a summer, a fall, and a winter. Fourth turning is the winter. Its one-word definition is crisis. And its key defining attribute is loss of faith in your institutions. Boy, does that not cover it post-COVID? I've lost all faith in the CDC, the FDA. Once upon a time, as a young man, I would have loved to get into Harvard. Pinnacle, feather in the cap. Now I look at it like, whoa, sure glad I didn't fall into that trap. I've lost complete faith in that institution.
Or the FBI.
From FBI, justice, right? How about, anything related to anything in the government at this point? I can't think of a single agency. It's really knocking the cover off the ball. But that's what happens. We lose faith in our core institutions.
Including our churches and denominations.
Right? And when you have that leads to that sense of crisis. And so you can feel that's happening faster and faster, right? And it's getting, I call this period the quickening, because we're kind of in the late stage of the fourth turning. Things go really fast from here. And unfortunately, one of the defining moments at the tail end of the fourth turning is war, right? We had World War I, World War II, Civil War. They all map into that arc of that fourth turning. And so you can feel it, right? We're going to get into war. Nobody will quite explain why. I've heard all these people say, Iran, we're going to have to attack Iran. And I stump them every time because I say, please explain exactly what threat Iran is to the United States, and myself living here in the United States. Go, and nobody can really point out anything particular, right? It's just words that they've been told. But if we attack Iran, prediction, it's going to go a lot worse than anybody else we've ever sort of tangled up with of late. They have much better military. They've got missiles. They've got all kinds of options. They could close off the Strait of Hormuz.
Hold right there. Computer's going to take it away. I want you to pick it up on the other side. Don't go away. Chris Martenson, peakprosperity.com.
News is moving faster than ever, and so are we. Worldview Tube brings you 24/7 live stream coverage and now real-time alerts when it matters most. Once you have the Worldview Tube app installed, exit the app and navigate your way to Settings. In Settings, locate the tab labeled Notifications. Select the Notifications tab. Scroll down until you locate the Worldview Tube app icon. Select the tab, and here you can turn on and customize your notification experience for the Worldview Tube app. News doesn't wait, and neither should you. Turn on push notifications to stay informed. Every headline as it happens.
You're watching Worldview Tube, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.
All right, Chris Martenson is with me, peakprosperity.com, peakprosperity.com. Breaking news, something President Trump has just said related to Howard Lutnik and Jeffrey Epstein. But first, let me finish what we were talking about with Chris. Annie and I were saying during the 12-day war, Annie Cyrus and I, let Israel handle it. Let Israel handle their problem with Iran. We don't need to go get involved in that. And I'm a strong Christian Zionist, but I'm not for sending my kid to go fight in the Middle East. Sorry. I can support Israel in a lot of ways, but I'm not supporting them with my kid's life. I'll tell you something else. I also am not interested in supporting them with my money, because while I'm a big supporter of the nation state and their biblical and historical right to the land, they're a rich nation. They can support themselves. And we can help them in a lot of ways, but there's no reason to be sending them billions of dollars in foreign aid. So I have to be consistent, and that doesn't mean I'm any less of a Zionist or Christian Zionist. They're just common sense, constitutional, and biblical framework that I'm working with. It doesn't say we're in the Bible to be a Christian Zionist, you have to send your kid to die fighting their battles or die for the secular government of Israel. My issue is with the people, the Jews, not necessarily this secular government. Although I know Ezekiel 37 says they need to become a political entity, and then they come together with the dry bones, and then that's a political organization, a nation again, and then filled with the Spirit, meaning they become believers. They become believers. And that's what I'm fighting for, is the preservation of those people, because they will become believers, many of them. And God has a plan for redeemed Israel. So that being said, that doesn't mean I have to give my son's life to fight in a Middle Eastern war or bankrupt our country. So God is more than capable to defend them, and he will actually in the Gog-Magog wars. God that intervenes, and it says, so the whole world will know that he is God. Well, that being said, yeah, I'm concerned that this war with Iran will go way bigger, way longer. And, Putin thought he could just, I guess, win with Ukraine. If that didn't teach us anything, we better be very careful, because I hear generals I've interviewed before say and colonels, it always goes longer and it always is harder than we think. So you add in that, and then you add China moving against Taiwan. We've recently had Bessent state that if Taiwan is taken over by China, it will be an economic apocalypse. Those were his words. How many Americans are aware of what will happen to our country in a matter of days if all the chips stop coming to us to run this country? Now, it wouldn't just be an economic apocalypse. It would be an energy apocalypse, a communication apocalypse, a medical healthcare apocalypse, a national security apocalypse. But none of this is being discussed because we're too busy now with what is now, I guess, Fox Nancy Network. It's supposed to be Fox News Network, but I'm calling it Fox Nancy Network. It's still FNC, but it stands for Fox Nancy Network, because that's it. Oh, by the way, breaking news. They just found a toothpick on the side of the road near Nancy's house. That's breaking news. We better get a camera guy out there so we can watch them pick it up and put it in a plastic bag. I mean, this is the stupidity. Hey, they found a glove. Well, maybe it is and maybe it isn't. I'm like, are we going to get to well, if it does not fit, you must acquit. And who's the guy they're going to bring? Have we not been down that one before? But breaking news, hey, there is a Dairy Queen Blizzard cup on the side of the road. I think he took and had a snack afterwards. Breaking news, get a cameraman out there. Oh, look, he's putting it in a plastic bag. Now they're setting up a tent this morning on her front doorstep. Wow. I think they're in there watching movies. Personally, I think they're in there watching cartoons. They just don't want you to know they're in there watching cartoons. So they put up a tent. I mean, it's just stupid. The Fox Nancy Network. I hope she comes back and she's safe. But this is stupid, because you and I are discussing existential threats, global, national, and this is all being ignored by the Fox Nancy Network.
Well, that Fox Nancy Network they have a formula you can apply to them, which is the less importance it actually is, the more time they give it.
That's so true.
The really big important things they don't spend time on, right? This is really important, what we're talking about here. So I'm glad people are listening, because, today ignorance is a choice, right? So people can always choose to tune into you, listen to other things, get their full context. But at this point, let me be very clear about this. Whether you're reading the New York Times on one end or Fox on the other end, you're getting misinformed right now really badly. They are barely disguised propaganda outfits, and their job is to deflect and confuse and distract and entertain and all of that, but they're not there to inform. And I think that's unfortunate, Brandon, because people need to know there's some storm clouds on the horizon and they're coming, and whether we choose to recognize that or not, they'll arrive anyway.
Yeah.
So, here we are, and we should be aware of that.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's President Trump now, again, showing he's in a bubble. He's got to be told, hey, did you know this? They were shooting rockets at Putin's helicopter. I did not know that. I mean, how many times the press has had to tell him things? I'm thinking, it was right outside his airplane, I'd get up on the Air Force One and say, you're fired, and you're fired. Don't make me go out there and have the press tell me things in the national security realm that I should know. Well, he's clearly living in a bubble because we've all known this about Howard. Listen to this. This just happened.
Please. Mr. President, were you aware that Secretary of Commerce visited Epstein's island, and do you continue to have...
No, I wasn't aware of it. No, I didn't. I actually haven't spoken to him about it. I wasn't. But from what I hear, he was there with his wife and children. And I guess in some cases, some people were. I wasn't. I was never there.
Wait a minute. Let me listen to that again.
Commerce visited Epstein's island, and do you continue to have...
No, I wasn't aware of it. No.
Wait a minute. I wasn't aware that he was at Epstein's island. I wasn't aware of that. But what does he say next?
I didn't. I actually haven't spoken to him about it. I wasn't. But from what I hear, he was there with his wife and children.
I thought he wasn't aware of it. If he wasn't aware of it, how did you know he was there with his wife and children, Don? Chris?
You have to begin making things up for Trump. So he wasn't aware of it before Lutnik actually had to give that, cough that up as part of his congressional testimony, which was really bizarre because, somebody said, hey, you said you hadn't seen him after 2012. You immediately diagnosed him as a really creepy guy and never had any contact with him. But then you were on emails begging to go have lunch with him in 2016. And he could have just said, you're right, I lied. That would have been 4 words. He gave this 80-word Lutnik, oh, you understand, of course, that I went there and my wife was there and my children, our 2 nannies, we had friends, their children were there. We all went to lunch. We had our lunch and we left with all my children and my nannies. Why did you feel it was necessary to give us that detail, Howard?
Indeed. Peakprosperity.com. Peakprosperity.com. Hey, stay tuned for Crosstalk next at vcy.org. Take care. Hey, we're back on WROS out of Jacksonville, Florida, and you here on Worldview Tube. Just a few more minutes with Chris. So, Chris, where do you think this goes for 2026 and 2027? Where do you think the country's going? What window are we in?
I think we're about to go through what this is going to be the year of volatility. We're going to see a lot of volatility in the markets. We're going to see a lot of volatility politically. We're already experiencing social volatility, Minneapolis, Minnesota, all that stuff, right? So I think this is the year where we get a lot of earthquakes, as it were, because this is the 4th turning. Social unrest, market unrest, political unrest. I think that's what's coming. It had to happen. I think, it's where we are in the story. So it's what I'm preparing for.
Gold. What do you see that going to?
It's a lot higher from here because the one thing I'm confident on. So I said I had a lot of loss of trust in institutions. I have one trust, and that's that the Fed's going to print more and the government's going to deficit spend. They don't know anything else. So I have every confidence that they're going to stoke a lot of inflation going forward. And I wish it wasn't the case, but it's where we're headed.
And then as far as a war with Iran or China moving against Taiwan, any thoughts on those 2 issues?
I really hope neither of those things happen. Obviously, the Ukraine war with Russia has taught us that drones now, it's everything that we've sort of built our military around no longer applies, right? They have underwater drones now that I think kind of make our Navy a little bit obsolete. I think we're going to discover that next time. But we already learned with the 12-day war with Israel. What did we learn? We learned that they hit stuff really accurately and they couldn't stop it. We put Patriot batteries, THAAD batteries. We had our top-of-the-line anti-missile stuff in there. We caught a few, but not very many. That's the lesson. And they hit the things they were aiming at. So that's the second lesson. And of course, Iran has said, if you attack us, we'll hit things. And they can hit a lot of U.S. assets from their land without breaking a sweat, because we've got bases all over Iraq. We've got bases in Syria. We've got bases in the UAE. We've got them all over the place. But most importantly, If they shut down the Strait of Hormuz, that could double or triple oil prices, which would be a really difficult shock for our economy at this point in time.
What about banking collapse? Banking runs on banks, bail-ins versus bail-outs. Thoughts?
I think it's a high possibility we're going to see some of that this year because Japan is busy imploding a little bit right now. Their interest rates are spiking and there's a lot of volatility going on over there. So if that happens, we could see this implementation of this thing called the Great Taking, which happens when the financial plumbing freezes up. And a bail-in is just a way of unfreezing a bank's plumbing very, very quickly. But they've extended that now across the whole market, right? Stocks, bonds, portfolios all over the place. And I think that's a non-zero possibility for this year, that we have some sort of a hiccup financially that causes the market plumbing to freeze up. And that's going to cause a lot of distress. It's why people buy gold. Let me be very clear about this. Anything else you have in the financial system, even if it's your bank account, it's not yours. You are an unsecured creditor of the bank when you give them your money to hold on to for a while. Your stock and bond portfolios make you a security entitlement holder, not the owner of those things. Most people don't know this, but when you unpack it a little bit, there's a lot of legal chicanery standing between you and your assets. And I think that's what gold has been sniffing out, because, of course, when you hold gold, that's it. That's what happens. It's very unexciting. It's a yellow lump, sits in the corner, does nothing. But what it does do is it is an asset that cannot be seized by the system to correct its past mistakes at your deficit. It's a only financial asset I know about that's not somebody else's liability at the same time. So that's the world we're coming into, and I'm very happy sitting on hard assets at this point in time and watching very carefully and seeing what they do when they get faced with their first big challenge, when we get some of that famous market volatility. I don't know, stock market starts selling off. That concerns Trump. He yells at the Federal Reserve, maybe installs a new guy or gal. We'll see how that goes. And they just start printing again. We'll see what happens then, but it'll probably be like what we saw in 2020, but larger and maybe with go a little faster this time.
And about a minute and a half left here. Bitcoin. Well, there's the music now. But was Jeffrey Epstein behind Bitcoin at all, you think?
Well, he was. He was most importantly behind steering Bitcoin away from this direction it was going to that direction, the direction it started in the original white paper. It was a peer-to-peer settlement system that got the banks and everybody else out of the game. And after Epstein got involved, and with the help of other people, he wasn't solely responsible, it became digital gold, right? Total change in what it was, its original stated purpose. And so he was, yes, he had a hand in that. And of course, now we see that Howard Lutnik, who had an apartment right next to him that he got from Epstein for $1, brownstone in Manhattan for $1. Sweet, good work if you can get it. He's actually still involved with Cantor Fitzgerald, which is the company that's running Tether, which is the so-called stable coin that's backing Bitcoin. So Howard Lutnick's in there pushing.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel,